As the Israeli Palestinian conflict rages around the world, it can be very challenging to kind of sort out how to think about it all. But I believe I can be helpful by offering a framework based on biblical principles and my own experience working in Muslim countries and spending time in Israel. I'm going to give you 4 principles that travel together, captured in 4 words, and I hope it will add kind of a sane perspective. Now, the framework begins with the word humanity. Coming from a Christ-centered worldview, I'm called to be a person who loves humanity. When I began to work in Muslim countries, my first and most essential lesson was people are just people for the most part. I taught an English class for college students in Afghanistan, and I loved those guys. I learned they loved to laugh and tell jokes. They especially liked Russian jokes, as in jokes about Russians. They all had ambitions and dreams to become engineers or pilots or medical people. Some of them cheated on their tests. Others were very serious students, and they asked great questions. But most of all, I remember the laughter we all shared. In short, they were normal people who wanted to live normal lives, and that's where we need to consciously live as we look at the conflicts and geopolitical movements. Underneath the headlines, there are people who, just like you and I, who would just want to enjoy themselves, share lives with their families. And these people get caught in the crossfire too often, and it's a good thing to remember them and fan the flame of our compassion for them. Now, the second principle is history. Unfortunately, there are large geopolitical movements where other actors are involved, and this is where most of the controversy and the debate lies. But if there is one area where people in the West are ignorant about this conflict, it's in the area of history. You can tell this by the kinds of things that people say. And I've noticed that Westerners are very critical of the West itself, especially for being colonized. Between the U.S. and Great Britain, countries who engage in colonization are considered the worst of the worst. And I've heard Israel referred to as colonizers as well. And hey, I'm not here to say doing the whole colonial thing is a good thing. Where I have a problem is world history itself is pretty much the story of empire after empire after empire invading, conquering, and colonizing other empires. As far back as you want to go, you will find one empire beating up on another empire. This happened in North America. Native American tribes. The Comanche wanted to monopolize the horse and buffalo trade, so they went to war against their main competitor on the southern plains, the Apache. In the area where the Holy Land is, the Assyrians were defeated and subjugated by the Babylonians. The Babylonians were defeated by the Persians. The Greeks, through the leadership of Alexander the Great, took over where the Persians had been. When his kingdom split up, the Romans took over. The Romans reigned over all of that area up until the time of the Ottoman Empire, which was a Muslim kingdom, by the way. The Ottomans literally laid siege to the capital of the Byzantine Empire, a city called Constantinople, which was largely Christian at the time, and had the largest church in the world, a place called the Hagia Sophia, changed over into a Muslim mosque. They also changed the name of the city to Istanbul, making that Muslim kingdom, colonizers. It was not until World War I that an empire defeated the Ottomans, and that was Great Britain. This history is relevant for a couple of very important reasons. There was only one group which ruled over the territory we now call Palestine as an independent sovereign nation in all of its history, and that was the Jews. Now, before they arrived, that area was a collection of city-states, and after they formed their nation, they held it until the Babylonians took it from them. Later, as one of Alexander's offshoot kingdoms held it, the Jews retook the land for about 80 years before the Romans took it from them. Then it went to the Ottomans, and on it goes. Then it went to the British. Except for when it was the independent state of Israel, it was only a small piece of territory under larger kingdoms. The name Palestine was given to it by the Romans to try to take away its Jewish identity. Now, that's one key reason. Second, it's ironic that Westerners are critical of all the colonizing when Islam was a very colonizing movement which didn't come along until 600 years after the birth of Christ, and that's why the Hagia Sophia is a mosque instead of a church. And you now have countries with names like the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and so on and so forth. Islam, based on the history, is an expansionist movement. It just is. Which brings me to the next principle in the frame, and that's philosophy. The current conflicts pits Israel against Hamas. The debate is raging in the West because Hamas ran into Israel and did unspeakable things, and over 1,000 people were killed, including killing families and beheading babies, all this horrid stuff. And Israel's reacting by bombing Gaza, where children are dying as well. So what do you do with that? Well, you have to ask, what is driving each of the parties involved? Now, here we tend to impose our Western ideals on the situation. We understandably say the people of Gaza are tired of being oppressed. And see principle 1, some of them certainly are kind of thinking being that way. They just want to live their lives. They want to tell jokes. They want to pursue dreams. However, countries are governed by leaders, and leaders are those who take the country in the direction they want it to go. Hamas issued a founding charter on August 18th, 1988, and I'd highly encourage you to read it. Listen to what they say about themselves as leaders. Here's a couple of samples. Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it. That's in the preamble. The land of Palestine is an Islamic holy possession consecrated for future Muslim generations until Judgment Day. No one can renounce it or any part or abandon it or any part of it. They go on to say, quote, the day of judgment will come not about until Muslims fight Jews and kill them. Then the Jews will hide behind rocks and trees, and the rocks and trees will cry out, O Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him. Now, in 2017, they released another more moderate version when the original radical charter received a lot of, caution lights from people. In it, they reiterated things like, there shall be no recognition of the legitimacy of the Zionist entity. On the other hand, when it comes to philosophy, these are the words of the Declaration of Independence of the State of Israel that was ratified by the United Nations back in 1948. It says, among other things, Israel will be based on freedom, justice, and peace as envisaged by the prophets of Israel. It will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. The State of Israel will guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture. It will safeguard the holy places of all religions, and it will be faithful to the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. That all brings up the fourth principle, and it's this word, depravity. On an historical and philosophical level, I believe the people of Israel have every right to be where they are. Britain attained it from another empire and essentially just turned it over to the United Nations. And there are other reasons besides what I've shared here that we could go into. But with all of that being said, I, like you, have heard atrocities and injustices carried out by Israel. And that's what many people use as their reference point. That's why I include the concept of depravity. Human beings, while created in God's image, are fallen. They do fallen things. Now, what that means is it's no surprise that Israelis have been guilty of injustices. Now, just because I'm pro-Israel doesn't mean I have to agree with everything they do. I'm pro-American, and I don't agree with everything we do. That's why philosophy and history are so important. There's every evidence that the driving philosophy of Hamas is wanting to eradicate Israel. They say it. They have acted on it. On the other hand, 20% of the population of Israel is Arab. Arabs serve in the government. Israel's open to the world and functions like a Western liberal democracy. Humanity shows up on both sides without a doubt. Not all Gazans are Hamas, but they are trapped under the cruel and evil leadership of Hamas. Depravity shows up on both sides. It's going to. But in the end, which side has a philosophy that's going to mean the greatest amount of peace for the greatest number of people in our world? I hope all that helps. See you next time.